Hi everyone, I'm going to read for you a really funny story called Mr. Follicule's Wonderful Beard. It's written by H.L. Goldsworthy and Georgie Burkett. Mr. Follicule had no hair, not a single strand, and he was as bald as a beach ball. One night Mr. Follicule looked in the mirror and said, "Wish I had some hair and a wonderful beard to take care of." The next morning Mr. Follicule looked in the mirror and got a big surprise. His head was as bald as ever, but his chin was covered with bristles. He inspected his stubble very closely. He looked at it frontways and sideways. "Stubble! I have stubble!" He looked at it close up through a magnifying glass. He even tried to creep up on it in the mirror to make sure the stubble was still there. Mr. Follicule went to work a very happy man. But Mr. Follicule's boss, "This won't do," saw the stubble and said in a rather loud voice, "Mr. Follicule, you are a disgrace to this office. Tomorrow do not have that messy stubble on your face." Mr. Follicule felt very sad. That night he shaved his lovely bristly stubble and went to bed with a smooth, soft chin again. The next morning Mr. Follicule's stubble was back, but this time it was longer and stronger. Quickly Mr. Follicule shaved, but no sooner had he finished shaving than the stubble grew back, even longer, stronger and thicker. The stubble was growing into a big bushy beard. Mr. Follicule's wonderful beard was furry and fuzzy and shaggy and very, very hairy. He brushed his new beard very gently and felt very proud, and he walked to work feeling very happy. On the way, Mr. Follicule heard two boys whispering about his beard. The beard had not stopped growing. It was growing faster and faster, furrier, fuzzier, shaggier, and even more hairy. At the office, everyone laughed out loud, except Mr. This Won't Do, who said, "That beard looks ridiculous." This upset Mr. Follicule so much that he ate his lunch in the park by himself. It was a very cold day, a shivery day, but Mr. Follicule had his nice long beard to keep him warm, a beard that kept growing and growing. Overnight, Mr. Follicule's beard grew even more, wider than his bed, longer than a bus, bushier than a big bushy bear. It grew out of his bedroom door, down the stairs, and curled around his comfy chair. But it didn't stop there. Oh no! It grew out of the window, across the lawn and under the cars in the street. It had grown around the lamp posts and was blocking traffic. Some people laughed, but some people looked angry. Mums, dads, aunties, uncles, grannies and granddads, babies, children and teenagers all pointed at Mr. Follicule's extraordinary beard. And poor Mr. Follicule was very embarrassed. Mr. Follicule took a pair of scissors and cut off his beautiful beard. It took him all day to clean up the hair. He piled it into 100 big sacks, put them away in his garage, and went to bed. He was very tired. That night it snowed. It snowed all night. It snowed all day. It snowed and snowed and snowed for a whole week. Mr. Follicule couldn't get to work. Nobody could get to work. Then Mr. Follicule had an idea. He took the bags of his beard, washed it all, and started knitting. He knitted all day. He knitted all night. He knitted and knitted and knitted. Late in the evening, Mr. Follicule put all his knitted things back into the sacks. Then he went from door to door and left presents for all his neighbours. Each package had a little note saying sorry. When Mr. Follicule was finished, he went home, brushed his little beard, and went to bed. Mr. Follicule woke up to the sound of people calling his name. He hurried outside. His beard had stopped growing, the snow had stopped snowing, and his lawn was full of happy, smiling people, all wearing and using his extraordinary knitted gifts. And there was the biggest snowman Mr. Follicule had ever seen. It was holding a huge sign that said, 3 cheers for the wonderful Mr. Follicule and his beard. Everyone's so happy with all their knitted items. What a kind thing that Mr. Follicule did with his beard. I hope you enjoyed the story. It's one of my very funniest stories.